welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and I am delighted to introduce and welcome our guest author, Cheri Radke. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm looking forward to this particularly because this is just a really unique book. It's called An Accident of Dragons, which is a title that immediately drew me in, and it's so unique. This is just like a really sweet, cozy fantasy with some, I guess hurt comfort would be the term for those who know what I'm talking about. But it's not even so much about like romantic love, even though there is a part in it that kind of looks at it. It's just about like family and connections and love and guilt, and also dragons and cats.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think that it's certainly not a romance. So if anyone's
Yeah,
hoping
no, it
for a
isn't. I
romance,
mean, like I said, like there's
they're
like
not going to
some,
get the happy
no,
ending.
there's some, well, I mean, there's romance that is alluded to, like a past romance, and but it's
Yeah,
not like there's a romance that's being built in the story.
right. I mean, because I think there are definitely strong themes about sex and romance and the roles that those sorts of
Yes.
things play in people's lives and how it affects their self-esteem and other things that how it shapes their lives. But yeah, it's definitely not a story of, two people meeting and falling in love. And so I do want to be clear because sometimes people, are disappointed if that's what they're expecting. But it's in some ways it is a love story and will be more of a love story with the full duology, but An Accident of Dragons is more just about the individual journey of the main character, Teddy. And so.
So another thing I thought was just really interesting was how the world was set up. So Teddy is he's Lord Summer. He lives on an island. The island is called Summer. Summer is also the dragoness who protects the island. And he and the dragoness are they're bonded. They're like contracted to each other. And when you meet Teddy, it kind of like it takes a while. Like it's sort of like you're gonna kind of see yourself stumbling over a lot, but not in a bad way. Like there are things mentioned, and it's like, oh, I wonder what that's about. And then you learn, and you're just like, that's really interesting. So Teddy is he is Lord Summer. He's contracted to this dragon, and they can communicate. He does not live with his wife, who he has a stepson and named Brooke. He has a daughter who is with his wife Zinny or Zinnia, but they kind of live apart, and you sort of learn about their familial bond because it's sort of like the contract he's in, as Lord Summer, he's expected to have an heir. Um, when when something happens, Zinni ends up not going missing or getting kidnapped. Um, Teddy is sort of thrust into this adventure um, to find her and also to, sort of discover a little bit and heal from past trauma. But it was just a really interesting way of exploring all of that. So, I don't want to spoil everything for people, but if you don't mind, can you chat a little bit about where the idea for this story came from?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely a very character first writer, and I think the character of Teddy was definitely something that was in my head for a long time. That I think actually iterations of him appeared in other stories that I worked on, though I often was trying to put him as a side character, I think, when I wrote other books, which because I think that's sort of what the media that we all consume sort of teaches us that characters like Teddy belong as a side character. I guess we haven't actually mentioned that he's gay and
We
a
haven't, and
fairly
I was going to get to that in particular.
right.
I was sort of skirting around that in the beginning.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, no, that's fine. But like
yeah,
he's a sort of fairly flamboyant and foppish gay man, and that like he would normally be the comic relief character in a lot of other stories, and that
the
those
sassy
have
gay
always been my
friend, or, yeah,
yeah, those have always
yeah.
been my favorite characters. Though I was always fixated on these sort of like fun side character type people, and that then when I finally gave him his own book and made him the center of his own story, I think like things just really came together to show just I just wanted to explore what he would be like. The dragons, of course, also are very important to me because I always loved dragons and I always had particular ideas of what dragons should be like. I don't like when they're too cutesy and they're too easily controlled by humans. They're basically just pets, and I don't like when it's more of like a gaming style world building where there's all these different species with specific powers and things. I want dragons to be totally alien and totally impossible for us to understand. And so, I mean, I think that was the other side of the concept for this, of like to create the dragoness Summer, who's just unbelievably powerful and whose motivations are never fully understood, even though it's not a complete black box. We understand some things about her, but that she's not just an animal. She's a very unique being, right?
I also just the idea of somebody the dragon contract, and how it works. See, this is like kind of where we're veering into some spoilers that I don't want to tell anybody. But what I will say is that Teddy isn't necessarily the natural choice to have been Lord Summer, for reasons like, reasons why we find out, like, okay, so Kana is his wife. It was an arrangement for this reason, for other reasons that we find out as the story grows. And I think like one of my favorite things about this story was kind of going along with Teddy, through his flirtations and through his, um, mishaps and through his, like journey to save his daughter, but also, other things, figuring out why, how this all came to be and how it connects to the idea of having a dragon contract. It was really nicely done. The side characters were also very good. And I was a huge fan of the cats.
Oh,
Um,
good.
uh, so if it started with him, the world basically, and the dragons, the world basically sort of built around both of them then.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. That I mean, to be inspired to write a story, I need to feel like I really love this character, and that to like have them in a situation where I myself am not really sure what they should do, and like to improve their situation. Because at the start of the story, I'd say Teddy is like he has a good situation in a lot of ways. His material comforts are all taken care of, and he has a loving family. But of course, he's not happy that he's kind of suffering from pretty severe imposter syndrome, that he doesn't feel at home in his leadership role. He doesn't think he's the right person to be in this kind of role. And that, of course, being married to a woman is not right for him as a gay man, and that he doesn't really know how to deal with that. And that I myself was not sure what he should do about these situations, right? That it's like if I had started the book being like, well, it's obvious he needs to do this and this and this, and that, that's the solution to his problem, then it wouldn't have been interesting for me to like go through it with him to figure it out, of like how he can be happier even in his circumstances. Because I mean, this also, it's not a book that's necessarily about like you're going to change all your circumstances or change the world to become happier. It's much more it's more of a middle-aged book, I would say, where you've already made choices. You've committed yourself to things, you have responsibilities, and how to find out how to be happy with the life that you've already built for yourself is more what this book is about.
I did love that he's 40. I also think that that is something we don't see a lot, with protagonists. was you know, yourself, do you feel like you don't read enough from that perspective?
Yeah, because I think also even when you do encounter a protagonist who's a little bit older, they often don't feel older. Like they're often still single, right? And like they might be 35, but they've never been married, don't have kids, don't have any real commitments to anything, right? Which that's like, okay, it's cool that they're technically 35, but like what does this even mean, right? Most people who are middle-aged have some kind of commitments in their lives that's sort of what I would say is the hallmark of middle age, right? Is that you have
And
made choices
responsibility,
already.
whether it's a responsibility you feel equipped for or not, which is
Right.
what Teddy's going through.
Exactly. Yes.
Um, again, I felt really dropped into the story. Like it really was just very atmospheric. Um, again, being a character-driven author, does like the scenery and the landscape come naturally to you? Or do you kind of do a little like
No.
tourism in your mind?
I actually have a terrible like visual imagination that I don't really envision things very much at all. And so yeah, the scenery and stuff is not something that's important to me. I'm all about like the characters and the dialogue and the interactions and everything. And so of course I muddle through describing things because I know some people want to know what things look like, but it's not what's important to me at all.
I mean, but it was, it was so well written that it really felt you felt like it felt sort of scenic to me, even though.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I guess I do have like a vibe of how I imagine things. It's just that then like I'm not very specific about it. And I'm also not particular about people having different interpretations, which I think is different from a lot of authors because, I love the idea of someday seeing fan art or something, which obviously hasn't happened yet because this is my debut novel, of course, but that like I'd like to imagine that some people might imagine the characters and the locations completely different and that that doesn't bother me at all because I don't have that very specific image in mind that I think some authors do. I I imagine the characters for who they are, like not what they look like, and so I'd be very interested to like know how other people imagine them.
So you say this is a duology. How did you get into writing to begin with? You'd mentioned before that you had written other stories that Teddy sort of appeared in. How did your writing journey begin?
Well, I've wanted to be an author for pretty much my whole life. Like I think I probably started attempting to write a novel when I was 12 or 13 years old. I don't think I finished that one. But that I was always writing. And I just I would go on and off with it at times that sometimes I got busier with other things and didn't write as much. But it was always sort of in the back of my mind that if I could choose one thing I wanted to do, it was writing novels. And then it was just that when I wrote this one, I felt it was really good and really needed to get out in the world. So this was the first one I attempted to publish. And so yeah, but I've hoped for this for a long time. So this is a big deal for me.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
How did the journey to getting published work for you? Did you shop it around or yeah, how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, I did the normal thing of querying literary agents, getting an agent, then she put it on submission to publishers, and it actually went pretty smoothly, that like, which is great for me. I know lots of people have horror stories of like going through like, multiple different manuscripts before they can land an agent and then maybe, dying on submission of that no editors want it and they keep going, but that for me, I mean, I feel glad that I waited to attempt it until I had a manuscript that I was just really confident in, and then it went pretty smoothly in terms of getting an agent and getting a deal. So I'm very happy with my publisher Erewhon, which is part of Kensington, and my agent has been great. So yeah, it's gone pretty smoothly.
So what could we, without again giving too much away, what could we expect from the second installment of this book?
Well, the second installment does have a different main character. It's not about Teddy. Teddy is still in it as a significant character, but there's a new protagonist, which I've, I guess I can tell you it is. It doesn't mean anything since we haven't brought up this character yet, but it's Tom Hollow. He's going to be the protagonist, which I should is different because he's a very different type of person than Teddy. But so Teddy is a love interest now.
I was hoping, I was feeling that, and I was like kind of hoping that that was the direction you were going to go in. And that was what I was getting. But again, like if I say too much as to why, I was like, oh, then it gives away too much of what happens in the story. But I did really enjoy Tom Hollow, and I will say, like, I really thought that the relationship between Teddy and Zinny, and also the dragon, like, were all very sweet, and Kana even, they were all very sweet in their own way, and it's like the love was really there. Even if it wasn't like a romantic love, it really was sort of just a tribute to feeling love for people who support you and feeling love for people who are part of you and, yeah, are in your community. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely that. I've never been a big romance reader. I like romance sometimes, but that wasn't, the goal to be completely focused on romantic love or anything. And that, I do think that people need more community. Like people have become too focused on that partnership is going to solve their problems if they just find the perfect romantic partner, and that you really need a whole community of friends and people who support you in other ways to be able to be happy. Like you can't rely on a partner for everything. And so I think it's I just enjoyed writing this book where it was more about Teddy realizing that he's not gonna be able to just be an island and ignore everybody else, that he really needs to embrace these people who are already around him and are willing to support him.
Thank you so much. Check out An Accident of Dragons. It is out in May, correct?
April 28th. So it's yeah, I think it says May on the
Yeah,
spine, but
I was
that's
gonna say,
like
I feel like this has been happening a lot to me. Like I look at my ARC and I'm like, okay, May, and the author's like, no, no, no. So,
yeah, I think it's just because it's like only a few days left in April when it comes out, they consider it like a May release. But I don't know. That's just I noticed it myself and I just assumed it was on purpose. So.
well, check it out. Thanks again, Cheri Radke. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page, and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.